Generic yet polite salutations to one and all. This is Trent Mayfair coming to you from my campsite in Minnesota once again. Now, this past weekend, I went to Tempest of Tridia just outside of Kansas City, Missouri. And, as always, allow me to give you some of my initial thoughts. First off, I'm from New England. We kinda have certain stereotypes about how things go down in the Missouri area, and one of them is that the area is nothing but flat land. And it's not. There's actually a lot of rolling hills. It's very beautiful. Fun to drive over as well. It's like going over whoop-de-doos. But I will say that away from those cities, there's nothing to do. Um, I will also mention there doesn't seem to be any roads in Missouri that actually go straight, save for the main highway. And I will also say that it's very true what they say down there. If you don't like the weather in Missouri, just wait 5 minutes. I saw lightning and hail golf ball size. I never thought that I'd see that. On the plus side, I now know that my car can handle hail that size, so I should be okay when I get over to the Rockies. So, speaking of the administration, the Tempest of Tridia administration, um, I don't mean to sound disparaging or anything like that, but they were minimally coordinated, sometimes only having 20 minutes to pull together the volunteers to NPC and get things set up. Um, and very often it led to the GM or the storyteller having to step in and fill in dialogue for primary roleplay NPCs who are plot hooks and people who are supposed to have the details, but because they only got the character a couple minutes ago, they don't really know anything. Um, I did witness a meeting between the GM, the story marshal, and the NPCs after one scene, and he asked for feedback, saying that he wanted to do this sort of thing more regularly. And when one of the marshals brought up that, there really wasn't enough prep time, the GM was very open to the idea, and, he agreed, giving the information out earlier would probably be a better idea. So, he is an open-minded GM. The story marshals are comfortable enough to, say, hey, we're having a problem with this. Can we fix this? So that's definitely, a good thing, even if they don't seem all that coordinated, even if things are going out last minute, they're open to new ideas, they're trying to get better, and that's all that you can really ask of any LARP, is that they listen to their players, they listen to their marshals, and they try to do things better. Um, the GM and the marshals were very dedicated to helping everyone and readily made themselves available whenever they could. Everybody pitched in, no stone left unturned unless they were just too busy to see it, and when a player brought it to their attention, they immediately turned that stone over. The GM and the marshals were hyper attentive during the game. They were constantly checking in on people's hydration levels, safety, and general comfort with storylines and progression. And given the 100-degree heat that we were in, the fact that they were running around and doing that for everyone really says a lot about their dedication to the safety and health of their player base, which, again, if you're going to be running a LARP, that is an integral thing to be paying attention to. So, moving on to the rulebook. This is not an easy rulebook to get through. If you have never LARPed before, you are going to have some difficulty with it. It's going to take you a game or three to really get the hang of it and learn how all your skills work and remember how to use them properly. But again, it's somewhat ponderous, just like any given rulebook, because they have to explain what all the skills and spells do. Some of the mechanics are a little clunky. Again, not judging. These are just my opinions. I do feel that a bit of simplification might help them, but I'm not sure how they could do it, because they have a rather complex combat system, and because they want to allow people to actually fight hand to hand and grapple with each other, but they need to make sure that it's done safely, and that requires a lot of explanation in regards to rules. You can just read the base level stuff and walk in with a general idea of what's going on, but if you actually want to truly immerse yourself in this game and move ahead, you will need to actually sit down and study this rulebook. Um, I will say that there's a very clear progression path for anything an individual wants to be. It does seem a little combat oriented, I won't deny it. Um, and there are a lot of skills, and people do have the capability to create their own, which is a very nice touch. It's nice to see marshals that are on GMs who sit there and say, if you work for it, you will get it, as opposed to give me some money and then you'll get it. Um, the character diversity, there's absolutely a role or an archetype for whenever an individual wants to play. If it's not in there straightforward, you can mix and match to make it your own. You can even effectively just take your normal life skill set and make a character based around that for this game and just walk in as yourself in a medieval setting. I would recommend trying to fit into the storyline. I was very happy that they allowed me to get away with my whole dimensional traveling arc, and they had a lot of fun with it. But yeah, it's always better when you're going into a game for a long term to actually be a part of that world. So in regards to the player base, they were highly open-minded, very welcoming group. They were very willing to roll with the punches on the stories. They didn't sit there and argue with the storytellers about anything. They just kind of looked and went, "Oh, okay, that's what we're doing now. Let's figure this out." And it was really nice to see how even just a general group of people who didn't really know each other, hadn't worked together before, could still come together and effectively, uh, have fun in a scenario and roll with it, and everybody in the group contributed. It wasn't just all on a single person. It was a wonderful experience in that regards. Um, in regards to new player treatment, show that you have a skill that people can enjoy, that can entertain people, that can be useful to people in an in-game sense, and they will take care of you. Um, the amount of love that they showed for one another was beyond epic. And there was only two new players at this game, which was myself and another bard, and she sang the most beautiful operatic pieces. Um, I do hope that she goes back just so that this next statement can actually be true. Go to the game to hear her sing. She has a beautiful voice. Um, Now, in regards to the immersion level that the players showed, this one was a little bit tricky because, first off, it was 100 degrees. And as I've said in a previous video, when it's that hot, you gotta give leeway and, not hold people too hard to the immersion level because it's just too damn difficult. So, there was a lot of storyteller narration at this game without many props or costumes. Um, and that requires a really deep level of immersion on the part of the players to remain in character, especially when you're simulating a 2-week walk that you only have 500 feet to actually simulate for. Um, it was a little bit more tabletop style narration. Um, People were always invested in the storylines. The storytellers and NPCs did a wonderful job being relaxed and joining in on those few meta moment jokes that we had. It's like, okay, we have to wait here for a minute and let me go check something. And people make a joke and there's a little bit of a drop in character. They come back going, I heard that, and then they do a follow-up pun or something like that. Absolutely wonderful about it. Um, and in regards to my overall experience, what I learned from observing the game is that players don't need huge fancy props to have a good time so long as they're invested in the game. The props do help, don't get me wrong, but a storyteller just walking them through the woods and explaining to them what they see can be an effective method as well. It's not one that I personally agree with, but by all means, if that's what you have to work with, you can still make it work. And that's actually comforting to know. What I learned from the players is that NPCs should be dynamic. I am very used to, here are the set stats for the Goblin NPC, and that's it. Go out. If a high level player comes along and one hits you, you're done. Respawn somewhere else and go for another person. And to actually see like dynamic NPCing at work, from a hey, who wants to volunteer, NPC base, that was very impressive. And definitely something that I am going to be looking more into in regards to setting up my own game. Um, Structures in a permanent site are not absolutely integral to a game, but they do help. Um, they play at a park just like Oldshire did, and you use what space you have. It's a stage performance. If your stage is only 500 feet, that's your stage. That's your stage area to work with, and so you make do. You make it work. Young children can LARP, but need to be continuously fed news stories and tasks to follow, or they start to annoy everyone else. Um, I do not have children of my own. I performed children's magic shows for 12 years, and so I don't exactly, have much of an affinity for children. I will smile at them, I will play nice with them. I will not let them know that they are annoying me because the world is a cold, dark, and harsh place, and at the very least, a child should not have to see that side of it. Whether or not they annoy me, that's on me, not their fault. So I just have to suck that up. But I did notice that when the kids didn't have something to follow that was within the game world and stuff, they tend to get very bored and they tend to like bring a lot of other people out of character. And yeah, so definitely something for me to think about in regards to what age groups do I want to allow at my LARPs. What I learned from the GMs is that it is possible to run a LARP that allows alcohol, but it must be done with very strict guidelines. And I saw people being very responsible with the alcohol, which I've always believed that alcohol and LARP don't mix. I have seen it go very bad very quickly. But this group knew how to handle it, and I think that's what it is impressing the maturity on people and then punishing them when they when they break the rules and they show no maturity for it. Um, it's important to have the zero tolerance policies in place for this sort of stuff. When you see somebody hitting too hard, you don't give three strikes. No, you know you're not supposed to hit too hard. You are now out of combat for a while, and we are going to talk about this later. Hey, you are really drunk. You're not supposed to be doing that. Go to your tent and sober up, and then get the hell out of here. Um, to continuously check in with the player base and the staff for feedback on how the GM can do a better job. I saw this repeatedly over the weekend. And, there's a very specific way to do it. When you phrase it in certain ways, people don't want to give you negative feedback. But that is the most important feedback to get. So yeah, phrasing it in the right way. Hey, did you enjoy that? Do you feel that that could have been better in any way? Things like that. And the importance of being flexible with new ideas, providing that they fit within your rule system and your world. The GM was wonderful about this. He found ways to make anything fit into the world and rolled with the punches, as it were. So, that's all I have for Tempest of Tridia. I had an absolute blast with them. They are a wonderful group of people. Um, I am going to be heading out to Amtgard for this week. Amped Guard only runs for 4 hours, but there's a couple of chapters up here, and since I had never been to Minnesota, I figured that it would be the perfect place to check out Amped Guard. So I will be attending 2 different ones. One this Wednesday, just north of Minneapolis, and one on Sunday, which will be south west of Minneapolis. So here's hoping that I see you there.